Welcome into this week's episode of Weather Extra. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Jillian Johnson. I'm sure you've already felt it, but over the past few weeks, temperatures across central Texas have been on the rise as the season of summer approaches. June 1st marked the start to meteorological summer, which is the 3-month period of June, July, and August when temperatures are hottest for the northern hemisphere. Now, the astronomical start to summer is just a few days away, but you may be wondering why we technically have two different starts to every season throughout the year. Well, the astronomical start to the different seasons occur on slightly different days and times each year based on the position of the Earth in relation to the sun, which makes it more difficult to keep climate statistics when seasons start and finish. That's why meteorologists and climatologists, those that are more focused on the weather, use meteorological starts to the seasons, as they are based on annual temperature cycles rather than looking at the Earth's orbit around the sun. Meteorological seasons are much easier to remember as they break down the 4 different seasons into groupings of 3 consecutive months, again based off annual temperature cycle and the calendar. And the astronomical start to summer is this upcoming Thursday, June 20th. We officially switch from spring to summer at 3:51 in the afternoon. The first day of summer is also known as the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere. Here in central Texas, we have 14 hours and 12 minutes of daylight, but after Thursday, our days will begin to grow shorter little by little. Now, you may not need this reminder, but we had a brutally hot and dry summer last year in central Texas. For a look back on what we went through, here's First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor.
Yeah, Jillian, as we kind of step away and look back at last year, you forget how bad the heat was. So our hottest temperature was 110 degrees. Craziest thing is we hit that twice, both August 20th and 25th. Now, when you look at the total 100-degree days, we hit it 66 times. On average, we only see 24 100-degree days, but we actually had more than that. And when you talk about 105-degree days, 28 days at or above the 105-degree mark. Our first 100-degree day was June 10th. Luckily, we haven't got anywhere close to that in most areas of central Texas this year. And our last 100-degree day was on September 24th. So yeah, it was a hot summer, but also a very dry summer as well. And you go look at these stats, it's crazy compared to where we are right now. June, 0.4 of an inch. July, only trace amounts. August, a little over 0.3 of an inch. You add it all together through the summer months, a little bit less than 3/4 of an inch of rain. And when you typically should see over 7 inches. That's why we've had the dramatic drought conditions, low lake levels before all the rain that we've seen this year. And we went on a streak last year of 56 days without any measurable rain. So a crazy hot and dry summer of 2023.
What do we typically see throughout the summer months of June, July, and August? Well, if you've spent any summer in central Texas, you know that the weather is normally very hot and dry. From the start of meteorological summer on June 1st through the end of the month, average high temperatures should start at 90 degrees and warm to 95 by the 30th of June. As we get deeper into the summer months, our temperatures continue to rise. The average high on July 1st is 95 degrees and climbs to 98 by the 31st. August is normally the hottest month that we see all year long. Temperatures on average just start at 98 degrees, but by the middle of the month, we start to see our average high temperatures drop, and by the 31st, highs should be back around the mid-90s. Summer is not only the time of the year when we have the hottest conditions, but it's also the time where we have the least amount of rain falling out of the sky. Heading into the summer months, the season starts with what is on average the 3rd wettest month of the year. We should see 3.35 inches of rain fall at Waco Regional Airport from June 1st through the 30th. But as we change months and head into July, we actually move into the driest month out of the entire year for central Texas. Only 1.82 inches of rain should fall on average throughout the 31 days of July. And following July and into the month of August, we have our second driest month of the year with a little over 2 inches falling on average. Living in the Lone Star State, the springtime months were very wet and active, but the recent rainfall has left us Central Texans in much better shape this year as we head into the hot summer months. For a recap of spring 2024, here's First Alert meteorologist Sean Bellafury.
Spring 2024 was one for the record books, with downpour after downpour producing an 11.4-inch rainfall surplus. And from January to May, we finished That time period, 12.28 inches above normal. Now, compared to the January to May time period last year, this year has been exceptionally rainier, 13.34 inches ahead this year compared to where we were at this time last year. Spring, March, April, and May finished at a half of an inch rainfall deficit last year, but if we go back to spring 2022, we're talking a 5.1 inch rainfall deficit. So can we use the past years to determine what may happen this summer? To do that, we will take a look at the developing La Nina across the Pacific Ocean. Now, in 2022, we were in a La Nina. 2023 and 2024, we went back to an El Nino, and we're on the downward trend. Likely going to see a La Nina emerge in the next couple of months, lasting through the forthcoming winter season. We take a look at the ENSO index. This spring, it was at 0.7, and it is trending downward. Of course, you see that big rain surplus for the springtime season. Summer 2023, the ENSO index was 1.1 and trending upwards. And last year was exceptionally dry, minus 6.48 inches away from average. But since we're trending down in the El Nino, going to a La Nina, summer 2022 may be a little bit of a better bellwether, minus 0.8 for the ENSO index, steady, meaning a La Nina was barely there, and we did see only about half of the normal rain we see during a summertime season. So with a developing La Nina, and especially with the exceptionally warm sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico and across the Atlantic, we'll have to watch the tropics for the next couple of months, but the trend for summer is giving us a slightly better chance than normal for above normal precipitation over the next 3 months. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafiore, KWTX News 10.
And just as you heard from Sean, we had very wet conditions throughout the springtime months. And for more on how these wetter than normal conditions have impacted our area lakes, looking over the past year, we turn to First Alert meteorologist C.D. Finley.
Well, there's no doubt that this year has been a much rainier year compared to last year. The year of 2024 in Central Texas has been a very wet one. In 2023, we were much drier at 13 inches of rainfall up to this point. But this year, we're more than doubled that number. We're at almost 30 inches, knocking on the door there of 30 inches of rainfall, but nowhere near close to the record rainfall, which was set in the year of 1957 at 36 inches. But despite not getting close to that, we are still feeling the effects of all the heavy rainfall that we've had this year, especially in our area lakes. Every single area lake is at 100% capacity and is much, much fuller compared to where we were at this point last year. Lake Waco is at 17 feet more compared to last year, 9 feet in Lake Whitney, and then both Lake Belton and Stillhouse Hollow are about 26 feet above where they were last year. So it's definitely a wetter start wetter first half for the year of 2024.
And a dangerous heat wave was lingering across the western United States to kick off the month of June. Those in the heat wave dealt with numerous days of record-breaking temperatures that soared well above the triple-digit mark. At one point early last week, more than 16 million people from at least 5 states were placed under heat alerts. Sherelle Hubbard takes a look at how residents out west were dealing with the early summer heat.
For people who have to work outside, beating the heat becomes a matter of strategy.
We have these heat exhaustion little packs that come with liquid IVs, cool packets. You know, we have everything.
Mark Enriquez is a sheet metal foreman who does hot roofing. Imagine adding 550 degrees to Arizona's already triple-digit temps. Staying hydrated is key.
Keep that in you, because once you come out here, you sweat it all out, and once you stop sweating, that's a red flag right there. We like to avoid that. So if you're sweating, that's good.
Another part of the strategy is beating the sun to work, like starting work at 3 a.m., having lunch by 7 a.m., and calling it a day at noon. In Visalia, California, farm workers have had a change in scheduling, starting their day at sunrise. They wrap up as soon as it starts getting too hot.
So they don't stress out, heat stroke, so on and so forth. We want to take care of them.
Medical professionals say acclimating to the heat is just as much a physical task as a mental one.
It's more about ourselves acclimating to a new temperature and what that means in terms of our outside activities. And we're going to be curtailing some of those activities perhaps sooner than we would have in other seasons when the temperature rose later in the summer.
I'm Sherelle Hubbard reporting.
Straight ahead on Weather Extra, we continue to focus on the summer heat. New data shows that last year was the hottest summer in years. Find out how scientists were able to discover that on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Summer of 2023 was hot across central Texas. And now with new data, we're learning last summer was one of the hottest summers in centuries around the northern hemisphere. And now forecasters say 2024 could be even hotter. Here's a look at some of the top heat headlines we're following as we head into the hot summer months. According to new research published in the journal Nature, last summer was the hottest in at least 2,000 years. Scientists looked at weather data and detailed sets of tree rings from thousands of trees across 9 regions of the northern hemisphere. Tree rings provide a climate history for each year of the tree's life, going back centuries or even thousands of years. And scientists were able to use that data to reconstruct annual temperatures for northern hemisphere summers. They found that the summer of 2023 was hotter than any other summer in at least 2,000 years, and they warn that 2024 is on track to be even hotter. And because of the hotter temperatures in the forecast, experts are predicting that staying cool this summer will cause a heavy dent in the pockets of many Americans. The National Weather Service is forecasting above normal temperatures for the country as we move through the hottest months of the year. That means many residents will be cranking up the air conditioner, which will translate to higher electric bills. An analysis predicts the average cost to stay cool will go up nearly 8% from June through September. That's according to the National Energy Assistance Directors Association and the Center for Energy, Poverty, and Climate. And a new study published in the journal Nature Communications says by 2050, more than a fifth of the Earth's population will be over 60 years old. Throughout that same time, our planet will be warming, and health experts say this is a problem because older people are at higher risk for health problems when exposed to acute and chronic heat. People sweat less effectively as they age, and their instincts to drink water also drop. The number of people at risk worldwide from extreme heat is set to at least double over the next 25 years. Now, government agencies have partnered up to develop a new heat and health initiative aimed to protect you from heat exposure. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention partnered with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to create the new plan. The plan includes a 7-day nationwide heat forecast that will tell you when temperatures could reach harmful levels, provide information on local air quality, and new guidance to help clinicians keep at-risk patients safe as temperatures rise. This comes after record heat caused record high rates of health emergencies in some parts of the U.S. last year. In this week's Degrees of Science, First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor had the chance to speak with someone from the National Weather Service about this new heat risk tool. We'll have a listen into their conversation coming up right after the break.
Welcome into this week's Degrees of Science. This week we're talking about a cool product that the National Weather Service and the CDC is putting out to help people get prepared for extreme summer heat. So today we're talking with Kimberly McMahon to talk about the heat risk product that y'all have. Now, Kimberly, before we dive too deep into it, when people think of weather being a danger, you think of severe weather and storms and stuff like that. But how dangerous can extreme heat be?
Well, actually, heat is the #1 weather-related killer in the United States, and it actually can kill people, and there are varying degrees to which people are exposed that make them more susceptible to heat.
So you are come out with this new product called the Heat Risk Map that you have. What exactly is this product, and why do you think it's so important?
To put it plainly, the heat risk is taking the forecasted temperature, putting it into climatological context, so how abnormal is the heat, and then marrying that with the CDC's heat health data to show that the heat is going to actually impose a risk on human health. So it's a color and number based index that uses high resolution climatology data with that CDC mortality data to provide a forecasted risk of heat-related or heat health-related impacts to occur over a 24-hour period. And we have a variety of colors. There's 4 different main categories on heat risk that help people know how bad is that heat and what does it mean to them.
So it's one real nice thing with you. Like I said, you got the color-coded and you got the levels to it. So when those levels go up, how much more risk is there, and how much should people change kind of their day-to-day activities based on that?
So I'll go from, I'll say, bottom to tops, the least intense heat. We have the yellow or minor category, and that's really for people who are heat sensitive, those who may be working outdoors, maybe pregnant, young children or older adults, those with chronic medical conditions, people who generally are more sensitive to heat and more susceptible to developing heat illness. Then as we move up the scale, we go into our orange or moderate level. And again, the same people in yellow will be affected. But if you have access to adequate cooling and hydration, when you're outside, that heat is still going to be uncomfortable. But you can also wind up putting yourself at risk if you are used to being inside most of the time with air conditioning and go to an outdoor event or do rigorous activity outdoors. So that level of orange or moderate, you should start taking precautions. But then when we get to red or major, everyone's going to feel the heat. Everyone's going to be impacted by it if they don't have easy access to cooling and adequate hydration. And then we have a magenta level, which is extreme. And that really is for our long duration, possibly record-breaking events. So long duration and very intense heat, and everyone's going to be impacted by that. But of course, those who are most sensitive throughout all those categories are going to get the brunt of the health impacts.
So we've already have, excessive heat warnings and heat advisories that are put out by the National Weather Service, and a lot of people look at the heat index. How is this going to be different from some of the other products that come out to try to warn people about the heat?
There's a couple of unique things about heat risk. One, it really does put the forecasted heat into context of how abnormally hot it is, because it uses that climatology. But then two, it also compares not just the maximum temperature, but the minimum temperature too, because if we're not getting cool enough overnight to provide relief, the impacts on our body actually accumulate day after day. And then three, it takes a look at the duration. Is it 2 days of abnormally hot temperatures? Is it 3 days? And if you're reaching, for example, 3 days of major category, well, maybe that third day will actually wind up being extreme because, again, people's tolerances to heat go down as the heat continues. And of course, there's that CDC mortality data that's built in. So every single location for heat risk gives that very local information of how abnormally hot is it and does it pose a risk to human health. And it goes out to 7 days. So you can use this to help you prepare, to help decision makers take action when they see orange, red, or magenta in the forecasts on days 5, 6, and 7 before excessive heat watches, warnings, or heat advisories are issued.
To hear more about the CDC's new tool, Heat Risk, and to learn more about heat safety, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube or go to KWTX.com/degrees of science. Weather Extra will be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Over the years, unprecedented heat waves have sent more people to the emergency room, and the dangerously hot conditions are expected to continue as temperatures could remain hotter for longer periods of time, which can not only be dangerous, but even deadly at times. In today's Health Minute, Mandy Gaither has red flags to help you recognize the signs of heat-related illnesses.
As temperatures rise, so can the number of emergency room visits for heat-related illnesses.
Heat can affect pretty much any body system, unfortunately, if it's left unchecked.
Between May and September last year, CDC data shows the number of ER visits for heat-related illnesses substantially increased across several U.S. regions when compared to the same months of the 5 previous years, especially among men and adults between the ages of 18 and 64. These illnesses can be dangerous, even deadly, which is why it's important to know the signs, says emergency medicine Dr. Kevin Watkins with Cleveland Clinic.
The most patients that we see that deal with severe heat illness, like I said, primarily heat stroke, are usually more elderly patients with underlying health conditions, or sometimes even young children that aren't put in a safe environment.
One of the most dangerous heat-related illnesses is heat exhaustion. Signs include heavy sweating, cold, pale, and clammy skin, fast, weak pulse, nausea, vomiting, muscle cramps, fatigue or weakness, dizziness, headache, and fainting. Get medical help right away if symptoms last longer than an hour or get worse, or if you're throwing up. The most serious condition in high temperatures is heat stroke, which is a medical emergency. Red flags are a high body temperature of 103 degrees or higher, hot, red, dry, or damp skin, fast, strong pulse, headache, dizziness, nausea, confusion, and losing consciousness. The CDC says these symptoms should prompt an immediate call to 911. For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
And as summer arrives, the potential for cancer-causing sun exposure increases. According to the American Cancer Society, skin cancer is by far the most common form of cancer in the United States. So as the weather remains warm, it's a good time to talk about prevention and education around skin cancer. Reducing UV exposure is crucial, so stay in the shade when possible. Also wear clothing that covers arms and legs, and wear a hat that covers the face, head, ears, and neck. Use broad spectrum sunscreen with a sun protection factor or SPF of at least 30 anytime you go outdoors. You can also wear light-colored and loose-fitting clothing to help you stay cool in the summer heat. But the most important thing to remember when it's hot outside is to drink plenty of water and stay hydrated. Well, that's all we have for you on this episode of Weather Extra this week. Have a great week and happy early summer to everyone. We'll see you right back here next weekend.